This one decision changed my life completely. So we're turning back to like 2014. If you're new here, hey, I'm Alicia. Welcome to my truck camper. This is a little story time today. I'm in the middle of renovations and we're at a standstill, so I'm sharing a story today. In 2014, there was a YouTuber, Miss Glamorazzi. She did beauty stuff. I'm actually not a big beauty person, but I liked her personal stories about her life because I was all the way in Alabama. She lived in California and her life looked totally different than mine. She talked about a study abroad and she said that it changed her life. I had heard that a couple other times after that, and so I really wanted to do a study abroad. I had a lot of money saved up and I figured if this changed other people's life, I want this experience too. To give you a bit of background, I grew up in Alabama and I went to school in Mississippi. I went to college 2 hours away from where I grew up. It had a very similar culture and I hung out in my church group back home and a church group at school, and so it was all a very similar culture. And when I did this study abroad, it was in London, and then these girls asked me if I wanted to go backpacking with them afterwards. I had no idea at the time what backpacking was, but I said yes. I was like, sure, that sounds fun. I was studying graphic design, fine arts with an emphasis in graphic design and a minor in marketing. This class, we studied maps around London, signs, basically. You can tell how much I retained from that trip. But I remember I took a picture of like the man bun because I'd never seen it before. And by the end of the trip, that was so normal that I was like, why did I take a picture of a man bun? Basically, that trip, I ended up meeting this Australian, and a year and a half later, I moved to Australia, and thanks to his encouragement, he was an avid traveler. I just met so many travelers on this trip, and it made me feel comfortable to start traveling after college. That was the big reason that study abroad changed my life, is because I met people that were doing something different than my culture of the South, where everyone kind of stays in our area and the majority of people have kids quite young. And it just gave me an opportunity to question my default path and question the way I'd been living and if that was a way that I wanted to keep living in the future. I think that it's really important to, get out of your comfort zone and try new things, especially while you're young and you have the ability to still, you don't have a lot of things locked in place and that you have to do. You can keep your options open and have a lot of different experiences. If I had kids, which I'm not planning on having kids, but I would really encourage them to study abroad and meet different people, different cultures, and they might come out and totally change what they were planning on doing with their life, their career, where they wanted to live. A lot about traveling has taught me I like the way they do this in this culture, this in this culture, and this in our culture. And I like bringing those together to make a life that is right for me. It basically, the more I travel, the more I realize there are a million ways of doing life, and I get to choose what's good for me. I get to choose what's best for my life. That's really empowering. That's probably the best word for it, is I felt so empowered while I studied abroad. And I had some scary experiences in Paris with drunken people on the streets. I got bed bugs in Paris. It wasn't all good, but the change in perspective, getting out of my area and the way we're doing things in the South, it helped me so much. I'm in my sweatpants today. I honestly couldn't tell you what has been a more life-altering experience than that study abroad. So just a recap of like where we went. We stayed at King's College in London, and then we had like a week to travel to another area, so I chose Amsterdam because it's so iconic. I thought I was going to be traveling with some girls, but I didn't realize that they didn't really want me traveling with them, but they didn't really tell me they didn't want me traveling with them, so I like tried to find them, but then they kind of like ghosted me when I got to Amsterdam. So basically I started traveling alone. I kind of like jumped in the deep end of traveling alone on accident, and it turned out to be fine. I had a great time. I met a lot of wonderful people, and gave me this confidence and empowering feeling that I'd never had before. You never know who you're gonna meet. You never know what you're gonna learn while you study abroad that's gonna completely alter your experience. After I studied abroad, I did a work and holiday visa in Australia, and I basically saw all these people doing, like, Germans doing gap years, and people that were teaching English abroad, and all these people that were living these like traveler, nomadic, different types of lifestyles. And I was like, I want to do that, you know? I don't want to live a normal life and what was normal to me. I want to experience the world, and that's what I did. That's still what I'm doing. I've lived in Australia, I've lived in Vietnam, I've spent time in Bali working remotely. I've gotten to do all these things, and if I'd never gotten out of the South, and that was actually my first flight from New Orleans. New Orleans was the closest international airport from New Orleans to London. Crazy. Don't regret that trip at all. Worth every penny. I definitely wouldn't be the woman you see today, traveling in my truck camper alone, working remotely. I wouldn't have even had these dreams to try to work for myself if I hadn't started on this path. Once you open the can of worms and realize people are traveling for a year, not working, they're just saving their money and they're traveling simply and having all these experiences. Like, I would have had no idea people were doing like that. I would have had no idea people were working remotely, no idea people were running businesses. And it just took me down a path of self-development and just choosing to live life on my terms. All right, take care. Bye, guys. I'll probably be making a renovation video next.